It's my pleasure to introduce your speaker, John Follis, who's president and creative director of Follis, Inc. John founded Follis, Inc. in 1993 after his previous Madison Avenue agency, Follis, DeVito, Verdi, became the second most awarded agency in New York. Follis campaigns have been covered in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Time, Forbes, the Harvard Business Review, and the Prentice Hall college text, Principles of Marketing. As a thought leader on the evolving marketing landscape, John is a featured contributor to 3 blogs, Adweek's and AOL's Fuel the Future, Small Business Trends, and his own Follis Marketing Report. He's also hosted his syndicated podcast, The Marketing Show, since early '06. As a requested speaker, he's addressed the World Business Academy, Chicago's Social Media Conference, and the Yale Entrepreneur Institute. And in 2005, he coined the term G-cred for Google credibility. Since 2004, John's marketing therapy program has helped businesses in all industries solve their marketing issues faster, smarter, and more cost efficiently. John's full profile can be found on Wikipedia. So join me in welcoming John.
All right, the name of the talk today is Building Online Credibility. And I'm going to start today's talk with a little story that happened to me not that long ago. I received an email from my local Chamber of Commerce about a presentation that a marketing person was given. And it gave the name of the talk, and it gave who the person was, and it mentioned the person's website, but there was no hot link to that person's website. So naturally, being a marketing person myself, I was curious to know who this marketing expert was. I think the name of the talk was How to Successfully Market Your Business. So the first thing I did was Google the name of her business. And when I Googled this marketing expert's website, what I got was something like this. Not exactly this, but you've all seen it, right? Oops, sorry, under construction, come back later, something to that effect. So I was even more curious after that, and I decided to, I tracked down her phone number, and I thought if nothing else, I would do her the favor and let her know that her website is under construction and maybe she should have something, even if it's just one page, something that just doesn't say oops, right? Especially when you're giving a talk on marketing your business. So I called her up, introduced myself, and when I mentioned it to her, she immediately deflected it and said, "Oh, are you coming to my presentation?" And immediately went into sales mode. At which point, I was really curious who this woman was and started Googling her name. The first 3 or 4 or 5 people with her name that came up were involved with selling essential oils. I don't even know what that is. And the only thing that came close to who she was her LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn ranks pretty high. And there she was on LinkedIn, but that was about it. So needless to say, after having that experience, I realized that this person has no credibility in my book to tell me how to market my business. More and more, this is what it comes down to. When we say credibility, we're really talking about trust. I mean, that's ultimately what everyone is looking for when they're considering to buy a product or service or join an organization or really do anything in today's marketplace. You're basically dealing with someone who is going to be looking at your product or service very critically. And they're going to try to figure out why they should be working with you, if you're a business or a product or a service. And the first place they're going to go is Google. Now this is an interesting quote. I don't know how many of you know Denise Wakeman. And this statement, I think, really sums it up. People are going online to look for solutions. If they can't find you, it's like you don't exist. Jeff Jarvis, who's another thought leader and author of a number of books on this, said that if you can't be found on Google, you might not as well exist. And this doesn't just apply, as I said earlier, it doesn't just apply to your business. More and more people are going online to search you as a person. When I came across this statistic, I was blown away. 80 million people every day are being Googled. That is more people that live in the 10 largest cities in the United States on a daily basis being Googled. This statistic is a couple years old, actually 3 years old. This was from 2009, about the percent of recruiters who are going online to check the creds on their candidates. I think the current stat now is closer to 100%. So even if you don't have your own business, you're just a professional, it's really critical to have strong online credibility, because at some point you might be looking for another job and you don't want to be the victim of a search and not have great results. How many people know Gary Vaynerchuk? Gary Vaynerchuk has built a very strong personal brand in the past few years. He actually came out with a book called Crush It a couple years ago, which talks about how he used social media to build his online profile. It became number 2 on the New York Times best-selling list. Great book. So he says it's really critical to your professional survival, regardless of what your field is. And this is not a new concept. 15 years ago, Tom Peters said something very similarly. Said you have to be your own brand regardless of your age, position, or what business you're in. So I came up with a name for this a couple years ago. I call it G-cred, quite simply for Google credibility. Just a simple way to phrase it so people can understand what it means. And the concept behind G-cred is really pretty simple. It's that your web content plus your visibility equals your G-cred. I came up with a term in 2005. A couple years later, I was published in Adweek talking about it, and then got it on something called the Urban Dictionary. So I was building up G-cred for G-cred, I guess you'd say. So the question really comes down to is, do you have G-cred? Now, I hired one of the top research companies in the United States and spent $15 million to find out the next fact that I'm going to show you. So hold on to your seats. This is very important. There's 2 ways to get G-cred. It's the stuff that you put up, or it's the stuff that others put up. That's basically what it comes down to. And for the purposes of today's talk, we're going to be talking about the stuff that you can put up. I like to call them cred builders. I've got about a half a dozen or a dozen of them. So we're going to go through a few things that can help you build your cred online. And since we were talking about LinkedIn, let's talk about that, because as I said, even if you're a business, it's important to have a good LinkedIn profile. Bill DeRosa, who just spoke, previously mentioned that more and more people who are looking to do business with a company are interested in the people behind that company. So you want to know who you're doing business with, and oftentimes the first thing I will do if I'm considering doing business with any company is check out the people who are running it, the decision makers. I want to know a little bit about them. So if you're going to have your LinkedIn profile, and I'm sure everyone here has one, but everyone here may not be filling it out as completely as they need to get good G-cred. So instead of just putting a short 2 or 3 word explanation of what your job title is, I think you're allowed something like 50 characters or something like that. You might as well max it out and put as much information not only about what your title is, but maybe what the benefit would be to someone who might be considering working with you. As I put for my marketing therapy business, I just explained it, an innovative and effective model for small business in all industries. And then I referenced a video on the bottom, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Also, whenever you use social media, make sure that it's connected to your LinkedIn. So when you stay active in social media, that's reflected in your LinkedIn profile. I think it's as simple as when you post something on Facebook or any place to just click sharing it with other platforms like LinkedIn. And if you have a website or a blog or all of the above, make sure that you list it on the bottom and that the link works. I've gone to a number of LinkedIn profiles where the link does not work. There's nothing that's going to help you lose your credibility faster than having a bad link. So even if you only have one website, you still may be having other links that you could put into LinkedIn if it's places that would help build your credibility, whether it be an article that you've written, your Facebook business page. Really, you have the opportunity, I think, to put 2 or 3 links there. The other thing I want to mention is recommendations. How many people who are on LinkedIn in this room have recommendations for themselves? Okay. There are a lot of different ways you can get recommendations. I'm sure you've all received requests from friends of yours saying, if you don't mind, would you recommend me to do this? That's certainly one way. I happen to think that there's even a better way to do that. Does anyone want to guess what that might be, another strategy to get recommendations? Absolutely. Did everyone hear that? Give recommendations. If you've got 200 or 300 people connected to on LinkedIn, and you can go through and have experience working with 60 or 70 or 100 of those people and can give a sincere but short recommendation to those people, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a recommendation back, but chances are that maybe a third of them will give them back. So if you recommend 70 people, you get a third back, that's not too bad. I don't think you need 50 recommendations, but it helps to have more than 1 or 2 recommendations. And also on your summary, make sure that you're constantly revising that and keeping it current, up to date. It also helps when you're writing this stuff to use keywords. So if there's a lot of things that you're involved with, you can list them. That's going to help people find you if they're searching. And the other thing that I referred to at the beginning of this when I mentioned my description, I referenced some video. One of the great things about LinkedIn that I'm not sure everyone knows is that you can add video. And you can do it through a platform called SlideShare. And you could also do it, at least from one other program, in this case, Behance, which is another platform that allows creative people to display work and connect it to their LinkedIn page. But whichever one you choose, I think if you have any videos, you should definitely include them on your LinkedIn profile. That will help give you credibility because more and more people are referencing videos to get their information. I don't know how necessary this is, but another aspect of LinkedIn that's more recent is your reading list. So if you've read some interesting books and you feel like sharing them, like I just referenced Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It. So if you think that your reading list is a good reflection on your credibility, it's just more or less a fun thing that I think is a fun thing to share. The last thing is skills and expertise. I mentioned earlier that under your summary you can make a list for that. Within LinkedIn there's a place where you can actually choose from a list of these keywords. And I think it's integrated within the platform specifically for search purposes. So if you haven't already done it, make sure that you go through that list and add the skills and expertise that you have. That'll not only help your credibility with LinkedIn, but it'll help the search. So when it comes down to building your G-cred, it really comes down to these 2 words, great content. I'm sure you've heard this many times before. And when you're talking about great content, there's many ways you can do it. These are just a few. I'm going to start with talking about videos. This was a statement that came out of a recent Cisco research study that is pretty amazing, talking about how video is currently a quarter of the web's traffic. But based on their research, they think it could be as high as 90%. That's incredible. So if you haven't started getting involved in video, I would encourage you to try to do that. Here are some examples of video. There's Gary Vaynerchuk on the upper right-hand corner. And 90% of his videos is just his mug talking to his built-in camera on his computer. He's got such an engaging personality, he could get away with it. I'm not sure I could. He's extremely articulate. He's not shy about being in front of the camera, and that works well for him. Occasionally, maybe you've given a talk somewhere. I gave a talk last week at the New York Business Expo at the Javits Center. I had that videotaped. It doesn't really matter where you speak. If you have someone that's willing to get it on video, that's a great way to capture some more content. You could also do demo videos like the two in the middle, depending on what your business is. Just having yourself online talking just warms up your content a little bit, makes your website seem a little bit more human. If you are able to get a bunch of videos, then you could create a YouTube channel, video channel on YouTube, and you could set it up so the most important video that you want to have is the main video that plays the first time any people go to it. It's a great selling tool, and again, if someone is really interested in video and prefers to look at videos, that can be a great source for them to spend a lot of time if you put up a lot of content on there. Now maybe you say, okay, I really don't know any video people, I'm not good on camera, I'm not ready for video yet. Another way to get good visual content is something called SlideShare. How many people use SlideShare? Raise your hand. SlideShare is, if you have a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation, it's a way to capture that presentation and get that online content. So again, you may not be the kind of person that knows or feels comfortable speaking and being captured on video, but I'm sure if you put some time and thought into it, you could put together a series of images, create a PowerPoint presentation, and put that in a SlideShare and get that online as online content. Of course, a blog for years has been a great way to build content for a number of reasons. If you keep it active, the search engines find keywords. So if anyone is doing a search, that's going to be a way for you to be found in more places. You have to keep it active. It helps if you like to write because it's really important to keep it updated. The other thing about a blog is that as you start creating content, you can categorize it, and this is another way that will demonstrate credibility by having a lot of different categories that you can be talking about on your blog. A Facebook business page is something that is continually evolving. Just recently they changed the timeline format. I think this is one of the most underutilized platforms for a lot of businesses, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But it's very important to put some time and effort in your Facebook business page because, quite simply, more and more companies are paying attention to it. The other thing, it allows you to have a little personality, take advantage of that visual masthead and create an image about your company. And then on the bottom, you see the different tabs. You can customize those according to whatever you want to show. In my case, I have a link for videos. I also have a Learn More tab that will direct you to another video simply because I think video is very important. And then I have another tab that talks about the speaking events that I've been involved with for the past couple of months. Twitter is another place I think that it's important to have a position. I think it's debatable about how actively you engage in Twitter. I think that it really depends on where your customers are and your prospects are. If you're in a technical area or marketing area, I think you have to have a very active presence on Twitter. This is an example of a guy named Guy Kawasaki who used to work with Apple in the, I think in the mid-'80s, and now is a technology strategist who's just come out with a new book. And he doesn't just have one Twitter profile, but these are 5 right here, and he might even have a couple of more that I couldn't fit in that screenshot. And this is just one of his Twitter profiles within an hour. There are 12 Twitter posts. So I don't think there's anyone that tweets more than Guy Kawasaki does. Whether you need to do that, I don't know. But I think that in business, to be seen as a serious professional, I think you have to be on Twitter and experiment with it. See how it feels to you. And the other thing about Twitter is it's not just about posting information, it's about listening to what other people have to say. Pinterest is the fastest site in history to break through the 10 million visitor mark. I was amazed when I heard this. The thing that is important when deciding how much time to spend on Pinterest is knowing a little bit about the demographics behind it. Does anyone know the type of people who spend time on Pinterest demographically? Does anyone have any?
Women?
Yeah. It's women. It was, I think about 6 months ago, the stats were something like 65%. That number keeps going up. I think that last stat I heard was 87%. I think the average income is under 50K. So if that's the audience that you're trying to appeal to, then spend a lot of time on Pinterest. Even if it's not, I think it's such an easy, fun platform to get involved with that you can put some content on here and again still contribute to your G-cred by doing so. This is my Pinterest page. And if you're trying to promote your business, you could put a couple categories that relate to your business. You see on the right I have marketing therapy. And the other great thing about Pinterest is it's not just still images, you could also have video. So that's what I've done with most of my posts on marketing therapy. And regardless of whether you do a video or a still image, you want to make sure that you add a link back to somewhere else that you want them to go. For example, on the first image you see for marketing therapy, when you click on that, that'll take you to my marketing therapy page. So these are just a few other ways that you could start to focus on to build your content, create content, and build your G-cred. One thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is your SIG file. A SIG stands for signature, and it's the information that you can program in your email platform so it appears every time you send an email. It's very important because it's another way of creating credibility, I think. This is an example of someone who does it well. This is an email that I received a while ago. On the bottom, under her name, she not only has her website, but she's got 3 hot links to her social media platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I think that's great. That's a good use of a SIG file. And regardless of what your email platform is, there's ways you can program it to do that. Each one is a little bit different. But figure out how to do that so you can customize it to your own business. Here's what I've done for marketing therapy. Got my website, my blog. I've got 2 websites, my Wikipedia profile, and my Twitter. So those are some cred builders. Now we're going to talk about the cred killers. There's a company that's based in southern Connecticut that deals with interns. Their whole business is about placing interns with businesses. They're called super interns. So if there was ever a kind of business that lent itself really well to search, it would be this, because when you're looking for keywords that reflect what this business does, you basically come down to Connecticut interns. Not every business can be defined so easily in keywords. This happens to be one of them. So just out of curiosity, because I was curious about their G-cred, I was wondering what happened when I searched Connecticut interns. When I would see, I'm sure they're not the only company in Connecticut that does interns, but I didn't think there were many, so I thought they would rank fairly high. So I did a search, and this is what showed up on the first page. None of them being super interns. So I said, okay, well, obviously they don't have a good SEO person, so it's got to be on the second page, not on the second page. Third, fourth, fifth. I don't know how that's possible that they could have SEO that's so bad that their business is Connecticut interns and they don't show up on the first pages, 5 pages of a Google search. You don't want to let this happen to you. Now, again, everyone's got LinkedIn, but is it good LinkedIn? You don't want your LinkedIn page to look like this. Believe it or not, there are people that have a LinkedIn page, as in this case, and don't feel it's necessary to put any information about themselves. This is basically a bad ad for this person. So in addition to just not completing things fully, I've just seen so many mistakes and such sloppiness. Here's an example of someone's information on LinkedIn. Does anyone want to tell me what's wrong? Can you find the Where's Waldo problem in this? Yes. January 1910. So he's worked at Productivity Institute for 101 years and 8 months.
That's good.
Right. And at his previous company, he worked at 101 years and 1 month. So it's a little bit shorter time at that first company. So you don't want to have stuff like this online because it really kills your credibility. Here's another example. This is a design studio. Now, you can't see it from back there, but right under the name of the company, Studio 63, they have a little line of something. Now, I'm going to do a close-up of that. That's what they have. I think that is supposed to say the art of communications, but someone sliced that in half. So if that's the definition of their company and someone screwed up on it, I would be concerned about giving my money to this company and having them do the art of my communications. Now, this is a blog post talking about gloves that was fine, I'm sure, when they posted it in December. I'm sure that was a fine post, but I checked last week and it's still up there. So you don't want to be coming across their blog when you just came in from a 87-degree day and look at their blog and read about these great gloves. So the point is that if you're posting content online, you want it to be good content and you want it to be fresh content. You can't start a blog, post something, and then not post something else for another 6 months. That's a definite credibility killer. And you don't want to have bad links. This happens a lot. We talked about a Facebook page before. It amazes me how many people's Facebook pages look like this. When you go to their personal Facebook page and they list where they worked, and you click on that and it defaults to something like this. And there's a ton of people that have not taken the time to even put up their phone number or their address. I mean, you don't have to fill it with videos and a lot of content, although I think you should, but at the very least, don't have a business page that has no information and only one person liking it, probably the person who put it up. And this is something that I used to see a lot of years ago, not so much now. But if you are a professional person, it would really be a good idea not to have an AOL.com domain address. You could get away with this in 1995, 94, but in 2012, it helps to have your own domain address. So again, a lot of people don't realize they think they're very well dressed, but they don't even realize the stain on their pocket. So these are just some examples of areas that I think you can think about when you're looking to improve your online credibility. And I'll just end with one last thing. If you're using some of this new technology, make sure you know how to do it right, because there's no way you can lose your credibility faster than sending the wrong image to the wrong person.